She was the perfect neighbor, sweet, polite, always smiling, married, stable, boring, or so we thought, until the day two men showed up at her door, both calling her their wife. I first noticed him about 3 weeks ago. He started showing up at odd times, sometimes in the early morning, sometimes well past midnight. At first, I didn't think much of it. People have family come and go all the time, and I figured maybe he was her cousin or brother visiting from out of town. He looked comfortable enough, unlocking the gate without knocking, like he belonged there. But then things started to feel off. He wasn't just visiting, he was staying. I saw his car parked outside overnight more than once. And once, I caught a glimpse of him through the window in a white undershirt, carrying a mug into the living room like it was his house too. I noticed he helped her carry groceries in, not just once, but multiple times over the week. And not in that friendly neighbor kind of way either. He was familiar putting things away in the fridge without being told, like he knew where everything went. Then there was the way they acted around each other. It wasn't sibling energy. It was softer, intimate. He'd touch her back gently when they walked in, or stand just a little too close. I saw them once in the garden laughing over something, and she leaned her head on his shoulder, and he kissed her forehead. Late one night, I happened to glance out my window and caught them saying goodbye at her gate. He kissed her not a friendly peck, but a full, slow kiss. Then she wrapped her arms around him and stood there like she didn't want to let go. I watched them for a while, hidden behind my curtain. They looked like a couple in love. Not relatives, not roommates. That's when I started to question everything. Because unless something had drastically changed, she was still married to a man I'd seen just last week, leaving the house in a rush, tie half done, calling out a goodbye. And that man was definitely not this one. She's married. That's what made everything more confusing. Her husband, let's call him Adnan, has been around for years. We've exchanged a few polite nods over the fence, and I've seen him mowing the lawn on weekends, taking out the trash, doing the usual husband things. He's the quiet, routine type. Every morning, like clockwork, he leaves for work around 8:15 a.m. in a crisp button-up and dress shoes, briefcase in hand, and every evening, he comes back a little after 6. But now, here's where things got strange. Within half an hour of Adnan leaving, the other guy would show up, like it was timed. He wasn't sneaky about it, either just walked up to the house with this casual air, let himself in, and stayed for hours. Some days he wouldn't leave until just before Adnan was due back, as if he had a schedule memorized. Other days, he stayed the night entirely and disappeared early the next morning, right before the husband's usual routine began. They were never seen together, not once. At first, I thought maybe they were on different shifts, and the new guy was some relative who'd moved in temporarily, helping out while Adnan was away. But the longer I watched, the more deliberate the timing seemed. It was like a carefully choreographed dance. One man out, the other man in. Once I caught a moment that cemented my suspicion. Adnan had taken the day off, apparently. His car stayed in the driveway all morning. The other man pulled up like usual, got out of his car, walked up to the door, and froze. He looked at the parked vehicle, stood there for a few seconds, then turned right back around and drove off without knocking. That's when I knew something wasn't right. This wasn't a guest, this wasn't a cousin, and this definitely wasn't innocent. She was juggling two men under the same roof, one legal, the other secret, and doing everything she could to make sure their paths never crossed. It was just past 9 p.m. when it happened. I was in my kitchen rinsing dishes when I heard shouting from next door. Their living room window was open, a rare thing, because they usually kept their arguments behind closed doors. But tonight, something had boiled over, and the words came pouring out. At first, it was just raised voices. Nothing distinct. Then, suddenly, I heard a man shout, "You promised I'd be the only one!" His voice cracked angry, but also betrayed. Like this wasn't a new fight, just the one they'd been dancing around for too long. Then came her voice, sharp and defensive. "I didn't think he'd come back so soon." Another voice, the same man, louder now. "Don't play games with me. You married me too." I froze. The plate slipped from my hand into the sink, but I barely noticed. My ears were straining, heart racing. Did I hear that right? You married me too? As in, also? There was some muffled back and forth after that. I caught fragments. Legal papers, secret nikah. You said he didn't matter anymore. Then silence, as if they realized the window was open. Or maybe one of them walked out. I don't know. I stood there, stunned. My brain was trying to wrap itself around what I'd just heard. This wasn't some affair. Wasn't just an emotional entanglement or secret romance on the side. She had married this second man. Legally, religiously, both. I didn't know. But the way he said it, "You married me too," wasn't casual. It was fact, not accusation. Suddenly, everything made sense. The carefully timed visits, the absence of overlap, the emotional intimacy, the secrecy. She wasn't just cheating, she was living a double life: two husbands, one house, and somehow, until tonight, they'd never met. It happened on a humid Thursday evening, just as the sun dipped below the rooftops and the streetlights flickered on. I was watering the plants near my front gate when I heard a car pull up too fast and slam to a stop in front of the neighbor's house. It was Adnan, the original husband. He wasn't in work clothes this time, just jeans and a t-shirt, but he looked tense, purposeful, like he wasn't here for a casual drop-in. At the same time, the second man, tall, clean-shaven, the one I'd seen coming and going like he owned the place, was already at the gate. He had just stepped outside to take a call, smiling like nothing in the world was off. Adnan stormed right up to him. At first, the other guy looked confused, surprised maybe to see someone else walking up the path like he belonged there too. They stopped a few feet apart, and for a second, no one said anything. Just tension, hanging in the air like a loaded gun. Then Adnan snapped. "What the hell are you doing here?" he shouted, pointing. "You've been sneaking around my house while I'm at work." The other man blinked. "Your house? What are you talking about?" "My wife's house," Adnan shot back. "The one I pay the bills for, the woman I'm still legally married to." The second man took a step back. His face dropped. "Wait, married? She told me you were gone, divorced. She said it was over years ago." Adnan laughed bitterly, but it wasn't funny. "Does that look over to you? I've got documents. Our nikah was never annulled. We're still married on paper and in every damn way that matters." The second man turned pale. He looked toward the door, like maybe she'd come out and explain. She didn't. "You're lying?" he said, but even he didn't sound sure. Adnan pulled out his phone and shoved it in the man's face. "Read the date. Read the signature. She's still my wife. You're not just sleeping with her, you married a woman who's already married." A full-blown shouting match erupted after that. I stayed behind my fence, pretending to tend to the plants. But I wasn't fooling anyone. The whole street could hear them now, two men yelling over each other, accusing, demanding, unraveling. The second man looked wrecked. Whatever he thought this was some clean-cut love story or new beginning, it shattered right there at the gate. He had no idea he'd been the other husband. No idea he'd been living in someone else's home. It was only a matter of time before someone called the police. The shouting had escalated to shoving, and neighbors were starting to step out onto their porches. One of them must have made the call because within minutes, a patrol car pulled up, sirens low, but lights flashing across the street like a warning shot. The officers stepped between the two men, separating them before things got physical again. Both were breathing hard, their faces flushed, one with rage, the other with disbelief. The second man, the one who had clearly been kept in the dark, kept repeating the same phrase like he was trying to convince himself. "She told me they were divorced. She said it was over. She showed me the papers." That's when it really blew open. Adnan, her first and legal husband, pulled out a manila folder he'd brought with him. He showed it to the officers. Real documents, real dates, real signatures, but no finalized divorce, no court stamp, no legal end to the marriage. And then, in a gut punch twist, the second man said he also had a copy divorce papers she'd shown him when she proposed they get married. They compared both sets right there, on the hood of a police car. The second man's papers were fake. Not just fake, they were sloppily doctored. The signature didn't match the official records. The date was from a time Adnan had been overseas for work, which he could prove. She had forged everything, lied to both men. And somehow she had managed to get an imam, or marriage registrar, to officiate a second marriage while the first was still legally binding. The moment it became clear what she'd done, the entire energy shifted. It wasn't just a domestic dispute anymore, it was a criminal situation. Bigamy, fraud, forged documents, emotional manipulation on a scale most people couldn't even imagine. Both men, now united only by betrayal, filed formal complaints. Adnan for fraud and emotional distress, the second husband for bigamy and deception. The officers took statements, collected the forged papers, and said a full investigation would follow. She finally came out of the house as the second man was giving his statement wrapped in a shawl, eyes wide, like she couldn't believe it had come to this. No one looked at her with sympathy, not anymore. one else's marriage. And the woman in the middle? She still hadn't come outside. The next morning, the neighborhood was a live wire. Everyone had seen the police, heard the yelling, maybe even caught pieces of what was said. By sunrise, there were whispers on every porch, in every WhatsApp group, and outside every corner store. People who hadn't spoken to each other in months were suddenly having full conversations across fences. No one could believe it. She had two husbands at the same time. By noon, the house was dark, curtains drawn, gate locked, no sign of her. The second husband's car was gone. So was Adnan's. The place that had been the center of so much noise and drama the night before now sat like an abandoned stage after a chaotic play. By evening, someone said she'd been arrested, not handcuffed on the spot quietly later, after the police had collected everything. Fraud, forgery, bigamy. The kind of charges that don't just ruin your reputation, they follow you for the rest of your life. A few days later, word got around that she'd posted bail. Some said it was her brother who helped, others said it was hush money from a relative who just wanted to bury the scandal. No one really knew for sure. What was clear was that she didn't come back. The house stayed locked. Mail piled up at the gate. Lights never came on. Neighbors passed by slower now, eyes flicking toward the windows like they might catch a glimpse of her or the ghost of what used to be her life. Kids weren't allowed to knock on her door for anything. Women whispered about her with half disgust, half fascination. Men shook their heads like they couldn't believe someone could pull that off for so long without being caught. Her name became shorthand for betrayal, for lies, for the kind of chaos you read about but never expect to see 3 doors down. And just like that, she was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a locked house, 2 broken men, and a neighborhood that would be talking about her for years. Within a week, both men were gone. Adnan moved out first. One morning, his car was packed full suitcases, boxes, a rolled-up prayer mat wedged in the back seat. He didn't say a word to anyone, just got in, started the engine, and drove off without looking back. The second man left a few days later, quieter still. A friend came to help him load things into a rented van. No arguments, no police, this time just a defeated kind of silence. Like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. After that, the house sat empty. The garden dried up. Newspapers collected near the gate. The once brightly lit porch, where she used to hang fairy lights in December and lanterns in Ramadan, was now just dust and cobwebs. No footsteps on the tiles, no voices behind the windows, just stillness. And yet, it still didn't feel settled. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing at the curtains, half expecting them to shift. Or I'd walk by the front door and feel like someone was standing behind it, holding their breath. That house wasn't just empty, it was stained, haunted in the emotional sense. Not by ghosts, but by all the lies she managed to contain within those walls. The craziest part? How normal she always seemed. She waved to neighbors. She watered her plants every Sunday. She hosted chai for the ladies on Eid, even gave out perfectly wrapped gifts to the kids next door. Everyone thought she had it together. Polite, friendly, modest. Just another married woman living a quiet, structured life. But all along, she had been pulling off something most people couldn't even imagine. 2 husbands, 2 lives. One reality held together by timing, fake paperwork, and straight-up nerve. It makes you wonder how many people around us are living lives we'd never guess. How much can be hidden behind a smile, a front door, a nice lawn? And to think she used to bring us cookies every Eid.